Welcome to Standard Deviation.
Good evening. Welcome to the show. No?
Oh,
I'm not doing that?
God.
I was doing a radio voice.
I know.
There's so many radio voices. A couple podcasts that have been recommended to me were ruined by the radio voices. Because there's some people, I guess, I'm assuming they probably came from radio to do podcasting. And maybe it's just like an old habit or something. But it's annoying. It's like a shock jock voice.
Yeah, Mark Maron was very off-putting to me at first when I first started listening to him. Because he has that, like, not quite annoying like that, but he does have just kind of this aggressive radio voice. But he kind of grows on you.
Yeah.
Tell the story of when you were a kid and you'd call into radio shows. That's a funny story.
Yeah, I used to call, well, not radio shows, but just like the local rock station, TK 101. It started with like, they would do these like awards, you know, like the 10th caller would name the song, get up, whatever. And I started doing that and like I kept winning, but I was like 12 or something, maybe 13. No, I think I was 12. Yeah. 11 or 12. So I couldn't actually collect the prizes. They were just like, the kids just kept telling me like, dude, like, I recognize your voice. You're still not 18, right? I sounded 18. I could have passed for 18 because, like, I don't know why my voice changed really early. But anyway, then I just started calling them up and doing characters. I was just make up voices and accents and backstories. The only one I can remember is Chuck, who would routinely call the station to try and get the band back together.
Do it.
Oh, no. I mean, I don't remember what the actual I don't think it was much of a voice, really.
What would you say?
I'd say, hey, man, it's Chuck. How you been? I was just calling to see what's up and just see if you wanted to finally get the band back together.
So stupid.
Yeah. And then we would just have conversations like that. They just played along with it because they were DJs are pretty weird. You know, they're always looking for material and just make a joke out of everything. So they would play me on the radio a lot and I would just listen to myself. It was fun.
I remember growing up, my sister was really into alternative rock, and I was really into like R&B, like TLC and stuff like that. She was into like Nirvana. And I remember arguing with her one time because I was talking about a group named La Bouche. And she said there wasn't a group named La Bouche, that it was Bush. And I was like, no, there's also a group called La Bouche. And she's like, no, it's Bush. And she was arguing with me. And so finally I called my local radio station, which was Z100, which played like R&B and that sort of thing. And I called and called and called and called until I went through. And then finally I was like, can you tell my sister that there's a group called La Bouche? And the DJ was like, yeah, okay, let me talk to her. And my sister was just like mortified. And she was just like, no, I don't want to talk to him. I don't want to talk to him. And then the DJ was just like, we don't want to talk to her either. And he hung up.
Oh, man, that's funny.
Yeah. I felt really proud of that moment because it was my older sister. So, you know, she was usually right about most things. But this was like, no, I was right.
How old were you?
Oh, gosh. I don't know. I was probably like 9 or 10. And then she was like 14, 15.
Yeah. I wonder why she was so sure that, no, you're just remembering wrong. Like, that would be a really big recall error, you know?
Well, she knew everything.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I mean, there is that older sibling tendency to just like whatever's the first thing they think of is certainly the law.
Right.
You know, that's just the way it is.
And they want to correct you and be right about everything.
La bouche. What does that mean? Is that French for the bush?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it makes sense.
It's French for bush.
The bush. I've been learning Italian and from Duolingo, and apparently everything has to have a the. And like I didn't realize how often we drop a the, so now I just have to think about that all the time. I actually couldn't think of any examples, to be honest.
Oh.
But apparently in English we drop the a lot, and you can't do that in Italian.
I have something really funny to share. So I recently posted, I did a financial domination workshop in Sydney, Australia, when UseMe was having its international premiere. And it's kind of a funny backstory. Like these film festivals, sometimes they have workshops, like, you know, like how to write a screenplay or how to direct a film. And for some reason, they asked me to do a workshop on how to be a financial dominatrix, just because it was just a quirky underground film festival and they just thought it would be interesting. So I was like, all right. And I did it. And basically, I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent here, but basically I treated it not so much like a workshop, but just kind of I don't know, what would you call it? A presentation?
Yeah, it was more
a
like
lecture. Like
Yeah.
I talked about basically how I got started, my story, and kind of like what I've learned along the way, and like some anecdotes, because I knew like most people coming weren't going to be aspiring financial dominatrixes. I knew most of them were just going to be like movie people, like just people that were just curious, like who had just seen Use Me and were just curious about what I do. And so I kind of just wanted to give them like a little peek behind the curtain type thing. Anyways, it went over super well, and I finally got the footage all edited, and I posted it on YouTube, and the response online has been really positive as well.
nice.
So that's all fine and well. And then I looked at the YouTube comments, which most of them are positive so far.
YouTube comments are always positive. What do you mean?
Fuck, I should have been more prepared. Because I want to read this comment real quick.
This is going to be good.
And then it goes on to something else. Okay, here it is. So the comment is, avoid Femdom scum. If you have a Femdom and Femdom addiction, you can get rid of it. Google sissy Femdom cure. So I'm like, okay. I Googled
Sounds
this.
totally legit to me.
So I Googled this, and the first link is from a bodybuilding forum. And there's one post from someone, his name is nonsense, but I got to read this to you. I don't know if this is a troll or what. So the subject line is, my cure for anxiety, femdom, findom, humiliation, and sissy porn addiction. I have emailed multiple times and not had a reply. If I don't get an explanation why this thread keeps getting deleted, then I will keep posting it. This is not medical advice, and I'm not a doctor. However, it seems there's almost no help given from medical professionals or online about femdom addiction, and I think some men think that's how they naturally are, which is not the case, as femdom fetishes are paraphilic. Women are sexually submissive. The cause of being turned on by femdom porn is low serotonin, which can be increased with swear words. If you don't want to do it with the swearing method below, there are also supplements such as St. John's wort and 5-HTP tablets, but look out for those side effects. And they should not be taken with serotoninogenic medication. And also ask your doctor if you're unsure. The way I cured my agoraphobia and coincidentally stopped being turned on by femdom is rather a weird method, but this has worked amazingly well for me. I use the voice in my head to shout at myself in an aggressive macho voice, calling myself a pussy faggot bitch with motherfucker between every word. I think it's better to do it in sentences rather than individual words, as weird as it sounds. Watch Scared Straight episodes to emulate it to sound like the prisoners shouting at you. I think Scared Straight 99 is the best one. A really good example of how it's meant to sound is the beginning bit of the song Woody Mob Livin'. If you feel it stresses you, makes you more alert, keep doing it. And do it when inside and not concentrating on something. I often do it for hours while lying down and have been doing it every day for months. It's very tedious. When I say the voice in the head, I mean the voice you hear when you're thinking about something. You don't need to say it out loud.
Wow.
So this guy spends hours in his bed cussing at himself.
Yeah.
calling himself a motherfucking faggot.
Hey, you know, if it works.
Motherfucking, like motherfucking between every word.
Yeah, yeah. This is really interesting to me.
Do you think it's real?
I do. Yeah. I'm not really sure, you know.
Because he put it on a bodybuilding forum. And apparently it keeps getting deleted. And he's like, why is this getting deleted?
Well,
or because people are reading this like, what the fuck are you talking about?
There's something about bodybuilding forums. What am I thinking? There's something I read somewhere or noticed where I think it's something like a lot of random Google searches I do turn up bodybuilding forums or something. There's something about bodybuilding forums that are like, they're more general purpose than they seem.
It's
or
the
something.
catch-all.
Yeah, I don't really know what the deal is with that. But with this, I'm going to go on the assumption that this is real. And he only threw me off a couple times. You know, I think overall he really seems like he's trying to be helpful. The comment that women are submissive, period,
Yeah.
The first time he started off really well, and then that's when he was like a little veered off.
This is unnatural because women are sexually submissive.
Right. Yeah. I can't quite get behind that. If he's there are people who struggle with sexuality and fetishes and stuff, and if you can help them with that, that's great. You don't have to start pigeonholing people though. But this is really interesting. So what he's talking about, the voice in your head, is I guess he's talking about the internal monologue. Serotonin depletion, I could see potentially having some part to play in any kind of fetishistic addiction. I don't think I've ever heard anyone advocating insulting yourself directly. I can see how it could be helpful, but it's also interesting because
wait, stop. How would that be helpful?
Oh, just as sort of like a reminder to not be complacent with yourself,
But he's talking about like sitting on your bed and just having an eternal monologue of calling yourself a pussy and a faggot and having motherfucker between every word. That's not like a pep talk.
Yeah, but remember, it works best in full sentences.
Okay.
No, it's not a pep talk. But, first, I definitely am not endorsing this method.
Mm-hmm. But you just said you could see how it would work.
Yes. That's all I'm saying is that I can see how it would work. I just wanted to clarify that I'm not saying it does. So I'm not recommending this. But, positive self-talk is good. But I think depending on the person and the circumstances, negative talk can be good too. He doesn't explain why. Like, why would this help instead of hurt, But it could be something like when you are accustomed to hearing yourself insulting yourself, maybe you're quicker to raise your behavior to your unconscious standards or something. Like you're quicker to criticize yourself rather than just kind of letting everything slide. So, if you're addicted to a fetish that makes you uncomfortable or if the fetish isn't the issue, but the degree of involvement with it is an issue. Isn't
this a bit ironic, though? Like, how much time is he actually spending watching femdom porns where people like me are calling him a pussy motherfucker faggot, and then he's advocating, just lie in bed and think those words to yourself.
For hours.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean...
He's basically advocating for masturbating. He's doing it to himself rather than watching women online do it to him.
Yeah, I mean, did he say that... Was he saying that this cures the fetish or the addiction? And to be clear, when I say cures the fetish, I know that language is kind of touchy because the fetish isn't necessarily pathological.
Stop being turned on by femdom.
Okay.
So the fetish.
I mean, I got to say, like, the only thing I've ever heard of about managing fetishes and diminishing their control over somebody's sexuality is something called orgasmic reconditioning, which I'll explain in a second. This marks the second thing I've ever heard about a potential method for what's the word? Deconstructing, I guess, or diminishing a fetish. Yeah, I'm gonna have to look into this. I wonder, like, where this guy, if he just did this to himself, or if he read about it somewhere, or if there's any precedent in psychological literature, or if he's just a troll.
I think he might be insane.
Oh, I mean, insane is putting it strongly. Maybe a bit,
Like, I think he might be schizophrenic or something.
Oh, really?
Sure.
Why?
Because it sounds crazy. So I think it might be someone who. I said schizophrenic, but I was just giving an example of something. Maybe I don't have any reason to specifically believe that.
You just mean some kind of delusional disorder.
Yeah, because I think it's very possible that he believes what he's saying, but he's crazy and he's convinced himself of something crazy.
It's also possible that it actually did work for him, and he may be just generalizing that it would work for others as well.
Yeah, I don't believe it worked for him.
So you think... well, the thing is, if he's delusional and thinks it worked for him, then I say that means it did work for him. Whether it worked for him because he's maybe extra susceptible to delusion. I mean, this doesn't seem delusional to me unless he's... if there's a delusion here, assuming this is genuine, I think the only delusion indicated is that this will work for everybody. Because that without data, you can't really say that.
Well, then the question is, what do you mean by worked? Like... Did he just discover this 2 days ago and he hasn't watched any femdom porn, so he's concluded that it worked?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's lots of questions. Yeah. I don't get any sense that he's like that he has a mental disorder based on this. He just strikes me as.
I think he does.
Yeah. That's interesting. Well, I don't see that. I am curious why like what the rules are of this forum, and like when he keeps getting deleted, like what the reasons are, they're citing.
I mean, that's one reason I think he might be a little crazy, is like he's posting this on a bodybuilding forum. I mean, you say it's a catch-all, but I don't know. This seems super random.
I just mean, like, I've seen bodybuilding forums often will surface a lot of weird information that's very niche specific and has nothing to do with bodybuilding. But I don't know about this site.
Well, now I'm curious about what thread this was in. I just screenshotted it, so let me Google it again. And then you go here and general categories, miscellaneous. All right, fair enough.
We could do an investigation, go through the terms, like the rules, and see like which rules he's violating with this.
Yeah, I don't know. He only has one post.
His profile image is I heart 5-HTP.
I was wondering if that was just a generic user pick that they give to people who haven't actually posted a user pick. I don't know. Because I thought the same thing. I thought it was kind of funny, and then I was like, oh, I could actually see that maybe being just their default user picture on this forum.
Yeah, I don't know.
So yeah, one post joined last month.
We don't need to go through this guy's whole profile.
I'm not going through his profile. I'm just reading what's right here.
Last month, wow.
Yeah.
So this is a new thing.
It's
like 2 weeks ago. Wow.
Yeah.
Shit. Okay, well, what are the other YouTube comments like?
Oh, they're all really positive. They're
nice.
like, Ciara, you're so beautiful. And Sarah, we love you. And Ciara, you are such a goddess.
And they're all your sock puppet accounts.
Yeah. It's like Ciara Lynch 1, Ciara Lynch 2,
This
Ciara
reminds
Lynch
me
3.
of that documentary we watched, Don't Fuck with Cats.
That was good.
Yeah, I just want to give a heads up. There's this documentary out there. I think it was Netflix, right?
Sure.
It's called Don't Fuck with Cats, and it's a real-life crime investigation story. It's very interesting about internet sleuths tracking down a bad guy. But I will say that there is a fair amount of animal cruelty in this documentary that they don't edit much of out. They show some stuff that's fairly graphic and disturbing.
You can tell they tried to not. They tried.
No,
they
I
didn't.
think they deliberately included quite a bit.
No, I know you think so, but I think they didn't. I think they didn't show a lot of the graphic parts. In my opinion, it was too. I was closing my eyes the whole time, but it's basically about a guy that was torturing cats, and he was putting videos of it online, and so you don't see cats dying necessarily, but you see
you see them right before and after. You see dead cats, and you see cats being put into things that are going to kill them, like plastic bags,
right?
Which I think is just really gratuitous.
It's hard. It's rough.
Yeah. Anyway, a friend of mine wanted to watch it, but she's easily triggered by that kind of thing, and just couldn't even go near it because of that. So, if that's something that's gonna
What made you bring this up?
Oh, because that guy, the guy in the documentary, I guess. Yeah. By the way, spoilers. So, the guy in the documentary, remember he had all those fake accounts of himself and fake fans and photoshopped pictures of himself with celebrities and shit all over the internet. How bizarre. Anyway, I think that's what you're doing with YouTube comments. That's the implication I'm making here.
Yeah, I don't really make money in Femdom or financial domination.
I don't think he made money with whatever the weird shit he was doing was. But
yeah, I'm agreeing with you.
Oh wait, what did you say?
I'm saying I'm not making money off Femdom or Femdom or anything like that. I make these clips, and then I make other accounts that are my fans, and I just do it to validate myself.
Yeah, and then
I don't know why I'm confessing this now, but
and then you get all that YouTube ad revenue.
Right. Anyways, so
YouTube's got to solve their demonetization situation. Some of that shit is out of control. It's a hard problem because, when you have that,
I don't think it matters to them.
Scale of it matters, just not enough that they have fixed it. What matters more in the short term is ensuring revenue from the advertisers that pay them, which means they'd rather deactivate an account or demonetize a video incorrectly than accidentally leave one monetized that shouldn't be, because that hits their bottom line instead of the creators, it's kind of fucked.
Right, that's what I'm saying. It doesn't matter to them.
No, it matters. It just matters less in the short and midterm than their primary revenue stream. I guarantee they're working on improving the algorithm.
Okay.
The future-proofing. A company like Google doesn't not think ahead, but it's pretty messed up because, I don't know, there's a lot of people doing a lot of hard work and then just having their money taken away. And when you have a business at that scale, you have to rely on computers to a large extent, just to run the show. Can you imagine if they were manually reviewing every video? They'd go out of business pretty quick. Well, they might be able to afford that. Not by a lot, though. So, I mean, yeah, it's tricky. And it's the same situation with Twitter and Facebook. It's a bummer, you know? And it's scary for the future. Because one of the cool things that's happening right now with the internet is the increased democratization and lowered barriers to entry. And the same platforms that are enabling that are also fucking it up.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope they fix that.
Yeah, that'd be nice for your YouTube channel.
Yeah, for my YouTube channel.
Okay, do you want to do a listener question?
Yeah, let's do that.
All right, we haven't done it in a while. Let's see here. If you're sitting deep in a bath and the bath water is above your waist and you take a whiz, does the bath water rise, fall, or remain the same?
Well, that's a good question.
They could remain the same? Does pee get heavier when it leaves your body?
No.
Okay, it'd be the same, right?
The question was the water level?
Yeah.
Does it rise or fall or stay the same? Well, it wouldn't fall. I think it would probably... No, it would rise, actually. Yeah.
Why?
Because water displacement occurs based on volume. Or, I'm sorry, volume, yeah. So when you get in the tub, let's say there's a clone of you. You clone yourself and you clone the bathtubs. One of the clones has a full bladder, one has an empty bladder. When you get in, the water level rises by the same amount because it's only the volume of your body and not the mass of what's inside it that affects the water displacement. So then the one that pees is increasing the water without changing their mass, so the water level rises.
All right, solve that mystery.
Boom.
I'll take that. Let's see. Oh, okay. So this one was from Sunny. Man and woman are on a cliff. They're both screaming, "We're gonna jump." Before anyone jumps, the woman pushes the man off the cliff. She doesn't jump. Before the man lands, he pulls a parachute. Who is more wrong in this situation? Well, this goes back to the trolley experiment, in which a person who is willing to shove a person onto the tracks to save the lives of 3 people, and kill one to save lives of 3 people, even though that's like ethically makes sense, a person willing to do that is a psychopath because they are willing to actually physically shove someone in the way. And in this case, this woman physically shoved the man off the cliff as opposed to the man who would have just let her jump and die. So neither of them are great.
I don't think I understood this scenario. I thought these 2 people were together.
So 2 people are on a cliff. They both say they're going to jump. And then before anyone jumps, the woman pushes the man off the cliff. And then the man has a parachute and lands safely.
Okay, so does this mean that they were both saying they were going to jump together,
yeah,
like a Thelma and Louise situation?
Yes.
I got you. Yeah, I think that what was your answer? That the pusher was more in the wrong?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Okay.
I mean, especially because, I mean, from a more removed standpoint, it's wrong, I think, to trick somebody in most cases, particularly if it's to their detriment,
right?
They're going to die. But ultimately, you're indirectly influencing them and not taking away agency and consent technically. Certainly, you're diminishing it, but not taking it entirely. Whereas what she did is just completely violating his consent because, you know, whether he was going to jump or not, he didn't go there to get pushed. Mm-hmm. So,
all right.
What an
These
interesting
are easy,
question,
guys. Come on, nailed it.
I mean, it's taken a little bit of gear turning, you know. Plus, I mean, that one, I don't know if there's an objective answer to that.
Yeah, I think it was just kind of a fun little thought experiment.
Thumbnail pose. We've been having this problem where we started recording YouTube videos. Well, we haven't had a problem. I have. I'm very picky about what thumbnail I choose. So I spend like 10 minutes looking for one and then just give up and pick a random one because we're always like looking up and looking down and cross-eyed.
Yeah, and when we both look stupid when we're talking, so...
I thought about posting one of those, like finding like one of the least flattering, both of us like half blinking and tongue hanging out, but I didn't. I'm too vain. All right, what do we got next?
Let's see. Gosh, we got a lot. All right, I'll just pick one at random. Is it a good idea for a man to get proof of consent on video, in text message, or in writing before having sex? Yeah, it's a good idea.
Yeah, I'd say all other factors being equal, like without specific case context, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Nailed it. Should we talk about why?
Yeah, you do that.
Okay, so if, God forbid, the woman were to wrongly accuse a man of having sex, he has evidence that it was consensual. Pretty simple.
Yeah. And, granted, consent can be revoked. This is an issue that's come up, actually, because of things like consent contracts, where there actually are like devices in place for this that are developing to specifically for this situation, and hopefully also to avoid violations of consent. But it seems like it's mostly a liability thing. But people have pointed out that, just because somebody consented to something now doesn't mean an hour from now they can't take it back. And then what's the point of the proof? Having said that, some is better than none, I guess. Yeah,
that's the tricky thing about, and actually it reminds me of something I pulled up on Facebook. I could read that in a second. That's the tricky thing about prosecuting rapists, because someone could come into a situation and agree to to do one thing consensually, and then not agree to something else as things move along, and that's a really hard thing to prove.
Yeah, and I guess it also brings up like the counter argument to our simple yes answer, which is that potentially that could be used to hurt the case of someone who was raped. Mm-hmm. Because if it's convincing enough to drop charges, or to file counter charges for lying, that's not good. Yeah. I mean, hopefully the courts are well enough engineered that doesn't become a common issue. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that would be kind of stupid, but courts are often stupid. So
this, speaking of courts being stupid, this kind of reminded me of some posts that some woman named Alice posted, and she said, "I'm going to start going home with random, very drunk guys and stealing all their shit, everything they own. It won't be my fault though. They were drunk. They should have known better. I'll get away with it 90% of the time, but then when one brave man takes me to court over it, I'll argue that I wasn't sure if he meant it when he said, 'No, don't steal my Audi.' I just wasn't sure if he meant it. I said, 'Can I please steal your Gucci watch?' And he said no, but I wasn't sure if he meant it. He was drunk. He brought it on himself. And you should have seen how he was dressed at the club. Expensive shirts and shoes. What kind of message is he sending with that? I thought he wanted me to come and steal all of his shit. He was asking for it. When he said no to me taking everything he owned, I just didn't know if he meant it. No isn't objective enough. It could mean anything." So I get what this woman is saying. I guess if I'm being charitable, she's saying like, just because someone's drunk doesn't mean you have the right to have sex with them when they're saying no. But I think it's a shitty analogy because... Okay, so the only difference between sex and rape is a lack of consent, or consent in general, right? Mm-hmm. So that's why, like I said before, it's hard to prove rape in court, because people want to have sex. No one wants their shit stolen.
It's a fair point.
Yeah. So if someone has 90% of their stuff in their house, it's obviously you stole it, and that is bad. But if you prove that two people had sex, you can't prove that. I mean, you can prove that it's rape, but it's very difficult to prove that it's rape, because there's just this small difference between rape and sex, which is, well, it's a big difference, really. I mean, I don't mean to minimize it, but it's not as clear as having 90% of someone's shit in your house. It's not.
Yeah.
And also, she keeps saying that this person said no over and over again.
Right. That's what I was thinking. Like, who is out there saying, well, I mean, yeah, I kept fucking her when she said no, but she was drunk, so I figured she didn't know what she was talking about. Right. Is that really anybody's defense?
No. And like, if I don't really quite understand who she's talking to. Like,
yeah, that's the thing. I feel like there's always a context we don't know with this shit.
I feel like she's saying that the courts are bullshit because these sort of things happen. But any guy who comes in saying, well, she said no, but I don't know if she meant it, like, that guy's going to jail.
Yeah, you're not getting off. I mean,
that's not a fair legal defense. Like, you just admitted to a crime, pure and simple there.
I mean, there's still the issue of, like, very often the punishment isn't severe enough, but it's not like you're going to be, like, just let go. Yeah, oh, okay. Well, if she was drunk, then no, it just doesn't even matter. We'll just throw it out. What's funny is that your point about this reminded me of West Wing episode that talked about there was a debate about prostitution, and it was about some bill was being, or I think it was an international agreement that there was this adjustment to a sex trafficking language that added the word forced to the types of sex trafficking that were being banned prostitution. Instead of just prostitution, it was forced prostitution, which made sense to me. But one of the characters was making the point that, trying to make the point that all prostitution is forced, which I don't think ultimately she did a very good job of. But anyway, she was making this argument, and she said, it's always coercive because it's nearly universally out of economic need. And then the guy was like, well, everybody's
all jobs are.
Right. And then I can't remember the whole conversation, but she brought up the point of I think he brought up the point of, like, if somebody breaks into my house and steals my shit, that's also out of economic need, but like nobody wants their shit stolen. So like there's actually a victim in this situation, other than just the portion of prostitutes who are forced into it, which is obviously that should be illegal.
Sure.
But I think I think prostitution should be legal.
Decriminalized?
Yeah, because, people need to have the freedom to make up their mind about economic decisions. It's not always in their interest, but this is an imperfect world, in case nobody has noticed that so far. But, yeah.
Yeah, in case anyone's wondering why I made that distinction, most sex workers advocate for decriminalization as opposed to legalization.
Why is that?
Because legalization makes it so it's regulated, and it's still... basically, someone put it this way, where it's to legalize it still actually makes it in a way like illegal unless you do it the way it's supposed to be regulated. And decriminalization puts the power back in sex workers, gives the power back to sex workers because they can do whatever they want, or not whatever they want. They can't commit a crime or whatever, but they're able to have the agency to do their job, and as long as they pay their taxes, they're not going to get arrested for it.
It's a fair point. I don't know how I feel about it. I'd have to do research, because given that the public health is at risk with that kind of transaction, it seems like regulation would be intuitive.
Well, then we should start regulating just people's sex lives in general?
No, but commerce is where the government tends to, one of the appendages where they draw the line, of involvement. But an analogy could be the medical profession. You can't perform surgeries unless you're licensed and authorized. And if that doesn't only apply if you're accepting cash for it, Sex obviously is a bit different, but...
It's a lot different, I'd say. You don't have to go to 8 years of school to have sex with someone.
Yeah. Well, there's stuff... massage therapy. You need a license to give a massage in exchange for cash or goods. So,
Do you?
Yeah. So if I came over...
I can't pay you $10 to rub my shoulders?
Nope. It's illegal. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Which actually I think is going too far on the other end of the spectrum. Massage is a regulated medical profession, and it should be, but it's touchy. That's, if they're actually out there prosecuting those cases when it's just as simple as that, I think that they have better things to focus on. But it's a good protection to have in place, because there's reasons for that. You can hurt somebody with a massage. There's contraindications, like cancer is something that... I was a massage therapist when I was 19, I think. And we were trained to watch for signs of cancer, never treat a cancer patient with massage under most circumstances, because you can cause it to metastasize through lymphatic flow. So stuff like that, the average person isn't going to know. And therefore, you can see where the risk comes in and why it should be regulated to some degree. Sex, I think, similarly carries risks. And if somebody's going to be doing a lot of it for exchange of currency, then at least maybe some degree of certification would be appropriate.
Yeah, but then the most marginalized people it's going to be a barrier for them. Yeah. What a tricky issue.
Yeah. Because And honestly, like some things, it seems like a weird hazy middle ground should exist where there are laws on the books that generally aren't enforced, but they're there just in case. But I don't like that.
Right.
Because I don't like regulations accruing without a specific applicable reason.
Well, I feel like if it was decriminalized, there could potentially be like a third party sort of certification that was optional, and then clients could, if they are concerned about that sort of thing, like health and whatnot, they want to make sure they're going to be with a woman who's, getting tested regularly and that sort of thing, then they can go through this third party and pick from that, but not make it mandatory so that then consenting adults can weigh their own risks and do what they need to do.
That idea sounds good. Yeah. I'd have to think about it more, but I mean, yeah, like if those third party organizations, the ones providing certification, training, whatever references, if they were regulated,
right,
then yeah, because that way, like if the government were to say, okay, here are your standards and we'll, audit you periodically, make sure you're keeping up with shit, then yeah, you could just let private industry, at the end of the government's arm, so to speak, handle the heavy lifting. Mm-hmm. It's somewhat more palatable.
You could see where that could be exploitive too.
Yeah, that's why the regulation is important, because it's that those companies could end up just an evil empire of their own.
This is just a tricky thing about like left versus right, because I was like thinking about it the other day, and I kind of had like a eureka moment where it's like, it's basically deciding whether or not we should trust private enterprises or trust the government.
Yeah.
And it's like, how about neither? Fuck.
Right. Yeah, it's why trying to just intertwine them in better and better ways, hopefully over time, is I think the best we can do.
Yeah.
And it's an open question whether we're ever going to get it right, or if there is a right. Mm-hmm. A friend of mine is an anarchocapitalist. So
that's fucking ridiculous.
Yeah. And I would see a lot of times, I don't mean to generalize about anarchists or libertarians who she was pretty closely aligned with, but I see a lot of really naive perspectives from some of them. I remember somebody was pointing out, I think it was her probably pointing out, that the people you're voting for, I think she was making a case against voting or something. Or no, I'm sorry, this wasn't her. Somebody was making a case against voting, pointing out that the lesser of two evils is still evil. This is a common argument. And it seems very childish to me, because the lesser of two evils is still evil, but it's less evil. Right? Less evil is good. Mm-hmm. If these people are waiting for someone who's purely good and has no flaws, well, they're going to be waiting a while. Yeah. In the meantime, Donald Trump is going to be president.
Right.
It's quite silly.
So can you explain anarcho-communism? Because capitalism, because my understanding is anarchy means no hierarchy, and capitalism is intrinsically hierarchical. It's literally the person who's doing the best is on the top. Yeah.
Well, I guess the caveat here is that it's been probably 10 years since I've reviewed any of the philosophies, so I can't really fairly explain it, but I think it was basically, from a broad angle, I think it was the notion of replacing government with private corporations, which sounds, I can't think of really anything more horrifying.
Yeah, and how does that coincide with anarchy?
Well, so here's the thing is, I don't know precisely, but based on what you just said, I don't think capitalism is necessarily hierarchical. Because a given hierarchy requires sort of alignment. And if with capitalism, what I'm imagining is the consumers and the companies, which really is people running the companies, they're not in the same vertical, If the hierarchy is amount of cash somebody has, usually the people owning the companies are going to have more of it by and large. But there's no formal authority structure. The companies they can't dictate what the consumers do.
Okay, but I mean, whoever has the most money has the most power, right?
Yeah, all their factors being equal, money tends to be power, yeah.
So isn't that a hierarchy?
Sure, it's just not ordained. And this was kind of my other point that I used to make, was that you are going to be subjugated to some extent by a power structure. at least in this contemporary Earth, that's going to happen. Pretty much no question of that. And so the question really, when it comes down to anarchism versus democracy or representative democracy like we have, is are you going to at least have a say in who that is? Not to say that they're going to be fairly elected or that you'll get a fair shake at looking at all the options and then they're not going to lie to you and mistreat you in the process. But at the very least, you need to have a vote. You need to have some say in who these people are that are, maybe they're being controlled by special interests, hopefully less and less over time. But if the alternative is just letting the cash decide and letting this be decided by cabals in back rooms, that just seems ridiculous. Again, it's naive because the only way a culture and a civilization gets better is slowly and through a lot of work.
Yeah. I think I agree with all that. I just keep coming back to like, don't anarchists or anarcho-communists believe that all things could be equal and there is a possible society, like a utopia where there, like no one is above anyone else, like there aren't natural hierarchies that form?
I think a lot would believe that. I don't know like what portion would explicitly say that, but I would think, that seems to be implied.
Yeah, so that's where I get tripped up over the use of anarchy in that.
Yeah, because anarchy, like you're saying, it really just implies not hierarchy. It doesn't mean chaos like a lot of people think. I mean, for some people it means chaos, but really that's not what actual anarchists are going for the most part. They're just going for I'm forgetting so many words today. the disassembling of power structures, formal power structures that are ordained by cultural institutions. So you think most anarchists would make that distinction? Like we're trying to abolish formal power structures? I think the sophisticated ones would. And if they don't make that distinction, if they actually are trying to make everything literally equal and egalitarian across the board by removing power structures, I think that's where it gets silly. And I'm open to being corrected on that if somebody has a cogent argument for why that works. But the thing is, I think a lot of times people also are kind of lacking historical perspective because it's not as if we've never done that. Humans have been around for a long time and we didn't start with governments. What we started with was chaos and a lot of subjugation that still exists, and to a lesser extent, at least in America. But what you get when you take away, or when you start with a system, an organic system of no power structures or representation or organization, is whoever is the biggest gang with the best weapons wins. And that's how it is. I mean, there's countries that are run by pirates to this day. I think Somalia, I think, was the one I read about. It was a while ago. I don't know if this is still the case. Yeah, but I mean, there's places that don't have real governments, and they're literally run by armed gangs who torture, rape, and murder all the time. And we started with that.
Yeah.
And came up with representative democracy over thousands of years, and it's an improvement.
Yeah, and if we were to dismantle that, we'd probably just end up like Congo. yeah. That's the thing I get tripped up over. People who are like, smash the system. It's like, what are you going to replace it with? Right. Yeah.
Let's not.
What's step 2?
Yeah. I was talking to a friend of mine about this the other day about, like when I was a younger man a few years ago, 3 years ago, so when I was really young, when I was like a teenager, I had this impression growing up as a liberal that I had a very simplistic view that conservatives, by and large, not all of them, but mostly, were just like racist redneck idiots, which is not the case. There certainly are racist redneck idiots on the left, or on the right rather, probably on the left. But anyway, I started thinking about the words a little more and learning a little bit more, and it came to my attention that conservatism, like I often associated that word with like being reserved and kind of uptight, like a tight ass conservative, like, oh, I don't want to do drugs because that's an evil or something, like a really simplistic, like this, we just got to stay in a row and this is this. But then I realized conservatism, as far as I know now, I think, and I could still be wrong, but I think it refers to conserving structures and institutions and traditions, which is sort of the same thing, but not really, because there is a cogent argument to preserving some institutions. And by institutions, I mean things like anything from marriage to democracy. I don't personally think marriage is so great, but whatever. But democracy, on the other hand, or our version of it, seems like that's worth conserving. On the other hand, a lot of stuff should be torn down and replaced. So that balance really seems like the only way to go, really.
Yeah, I can really see why there's that that saying of, if you're not a liberal when you're young, you have no heart, and if you're not a conservative when you're older, you have no brain. I think that's a little simplistic. I'm old as shit and I'm still a liberal.
Yeah.
But
you are old. But yeah, I get the point.
But like I get it, because it's like when you're young, you take for granted what you have, and you're angsty and you see what's wrong. And that's good. Like we need that sort of like fresh perspective on things, because there are things that need to be changed. But as you get older, you get a little wiser, and you realize what is working and why they're working and how important that is and how far we've come to get to the point that we are now. And you get a little more perspective about wanting to conserve that and being a little more afraid of like, you read a little bit more about history and see how easy it is to slip into something else, which is much worse.
Yeah, it's almost like there's like a default fallacy in a lot of people that they think they can figure out all at once a better solution and implement it. And for me, I think a lot of my knowledge of the lack of coherence to that perspective comes from things like project management, where, I mean, people love planning projects, but I don't think I've ever seen one completed the way it was planned. It's just not how it works. And if you expand that to the scale of a government, even just a city government, you can see how it could even get more complex. And then if you add in the fact that even if you could execute a plan perfectly, which is definitely impossible, it's not clear what the goals should be, because political philosophy essentially comes down to basic questions about human nature. And humans don't get us. We don't understand exactly what we are or how we operate. But it is clear that we're very imperfect, and we're seemingly the smartest animals on Earth, but it could take another, on average, 200 IQ points before we're smart enough to actually construct a good governmental system. So the hubris of thinking that I've got it figured out, it's this one, this is the government system we need, implies two major fallacies. One, that you can execute that at once as opposed to as a progression, and two, that you even know how humans operate on the micro and macro scale well enough that you can dictate the organic flow of society based on rules that you've established.
Yeah.
It's just not going to work.
Indeed. Should we wrap it up?
Oh, wow, that went by pretty fast. Yeah, let's wrap it up.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody, for listening. Send us listener questions at standardpodcast.com. And, oh, by the way, we have these asshole questions. We mentioned this Twitter girl a lot, and I finally figured out or asked her how to pronounce her name, and it turns out it's Ayla girl. And so her handle is what?
Ayla_girl. So it's AELLA_GIRL. Yeah, I was saying Aya because it's double L, so I was thinking like, Hispanic pronunciation.
Yeah, I Googled it, and there were too many different answers, so I just emailed her, and she told me. So anyway, check her out. She's got some very interesting questions on her Twitter feed and some other cool stuff.
All right.
Peace.
Bye.